Well, welcome everybody to our event today. Good day here on the West Coast in America, and good evening to those of us, including our special guest in the UK and Europe. And I am Dr. Eric Beery. I am the director of the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination at UC San Diego. And we're kicking off our new event program called New Profiles of the Future. Profiles of the Future was a book written by Arthur C. Clarke where he described all the possible advances in all kinds of realms of science and technology. And it was a wonderful romp for us to be speculative about the future. And for me, beyond so many things that Clarke did well, including writing movies and inventing gravity technologies, the Profiles of the Future, his view of futurism is perhaps the greatest personal benefit to me of reading Sir Arthur C. Clarke. So today with the New Profiles of the Future, we're going to have start a lecture series and ultimately hope to have some sort of media tie-in with essays and video. And we have a super privilege with our speaker. But just to tell you a little bit about the Arthur C. Clarke Center, we have all kinds of different activities related to Arthur C. Clarke and his interests. And Patrick, you can show us our next slide. And in fact, the next exciting event coming up for us is our second space mission, which is a payload to the International Space Station next December, this December 2nd, just coming up in a few weeks, where we'll be launching a payload from Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center that'll be going on a SpaceX rocket to the International Space Station. And our payload will be carrying brain stem cells in a structure called an organoid. And our payload will be there to understand what happens to these structures as they experience a month of weightlessness on orbit. And this will help us create technologies for stem cells here on the Earth, but also a little bit of understanding about what happens to the development and growth and aging of the human brain as we travel out to the cosmos. So we have all kinds of research and activities and things to look out for, so please go to our website, imagination.ucsd. But it's super fun, and as the director of the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination, I get to meet all kinds of amazing people. And so I've been all over the place and met many people. And in fact, just recently, I got to meet this incredible special guest who is Lord Patrick Vader. I got to meet Lord Vader at an event at the Science Museum here in San Diego, where we were doing virtual reality. Luckily, I had my own lightsaber on hand, and I was able to do battle with Lord Vader. We came to a draw. Neither of us were vanquished. But anyway, it's amazing to meet such exalted people like Lord Vader, and then also to meet special people like our friend Martin Rees. You can go ahead there. So Martin Rees is the Astronomer Royal and a professor of astronomy and an amazing person who takes both his science and his ideas and is helping us think about the future. And so today he's going to give us his talk, The World in 2050 and Beyond. And so it's my great pleasure to welcome Martin Rees to this Clarke Center event. Martin.
Right. Well, hello. It's a great pleasure to be with you. Can you see me?
We have you.
Okay, right. It's great to be at an event hosted by a body celebrating the great Arthur C. Clarke, because I was indeed one of those inspired by his prophetic book, Prophets of the Future. And I'm going to share my screen if I can. Yep. Yes, right. I should say at the start that I'm not a prophet, although because I'm Astronomer Royal, I've sometimes been asked, do I do the Queen's horoscopes? And I have to say, she's never asked me. But then, of course, I come clean and say, I'm not an astrologer, I'm a mere astronomer. I've got no crystal ball. And astronomers are rather poor forecasters. All I'd say is they're not as bad as economists. But we lack the insights of imaginative writers who can explore possible futures and illuminate the past. And I tell my students that it's much better to read first-rate science fiction than second-rate science. It's far more stimulating and no more likely to be wrong. But even with a cloudy crystal ball, there are some things we can predict. And I'm going to start off with them before getting more speculative. And the first of them is that the world is getting more crowded. And I'm going to say a bit about population trends. And one thing we know is that by mid-century, the world will be more crowded. 50 years ago, there were about 3.5 billion. Now the population is about 7.7 billion. And the growth has been mainly in Africa and East Asia. And this distorted map shows each country's size scaled to the growth in population in the last 30 years. And you can see that Africa and East Asia look very big. And if we extrapolate to 2050, we find that the growth is going to be mainly in Africa. It's leveled off in most other parts of the world. But the world population will rise to about 9 billion by mid-century. And that's partly because most people in the developing world are young and they yet have children, and also because the African population is going up fast. And there's a big contrast now between the age distribution in West Africa and in Western Europe and the US. In West Africa, the young greatly outnumber the old because birth rate's very high and because their life expectancy is low. And what's going to happen is that the histogram on the left will become more like that on the right by 2050. And despite doom-laden forecasts in the 1960s and 70s from the Club of Rome and Paul Ehrlich, food has kept up with the growing population. There are still famines, but they're caused by conflict or maldistribution, not overall scarcity. But if we want to feed 9 billion by the middle of the century, then we are going to need further improved agriculture, low till, high intensity, water conserving, and GM crops. And maybe some dietary innovations, converting insects, highly nutritious and rich in proteins, into palatable food, and making artificial meat. Not as much beef as Americans now eat. But to quote Gandhi, there's enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. And another thing, if humanity's collective impact on land use and climate pushes too hard, the resulting ecological shock could irreversibly impoverish our biosphere. Extinction rates are rising. We're destroying the book of life before we've read it. And biodiversity is crucial to human well-being. But for many environmentalists, this is important not just because of humans, but it's valuable in its own right. And to quote the great Harvard ecologist E.O. Wilson, mass extinction is a sin that future generations will least forgive us for. So the world's getting more crowded. And there's a second firm prediction, it'll gradually get warmer. In contrast to population issues, climate change is certainly not under-discussed, although it's under-responded to. And just very quickly, these are graphs projections from the IPCC's fifth report about the expected rise in mean global temperature during this century, various assumptions about the amount of fossil fuels we use. And it goes up high, but the models are still a bit uncertain, and the bars on the right indicate the uncertainty due to the uncertain science for each of the four models. But the need for urgent action was highlighted by an update from IPCC in 2018. But despite the uncertainties in these models, there's one message that most would agree on. It's that under business as usual scenarios, we can't rule out later in this century some really catastrophic warming and tipping points triggering long-term trends like the melting of Greenland's ice cap. Politicians, of course, don't prioritize this because they tend to focus on the local and the short term. And only if there's public pressure will they do actions which are important for the long-term future. But today's young people will still be alive at the end of a century. We shouldn't discount their future. But luckily, to introduce a bit of good cheer, there's one win-win roadmap for a low-carbon future. It's that nations should all accelerate their research and development into all forms of low-carbon energy generation and into other technologies where parallel progress is crucial, especially storage, batteries, compressed air, pumped storage, hydrogen, etc., and smart grids. This will be good for the US, but more important, it will help poorer parts of the world to leapfrog to clean energy. Because the faster these clean technologies advance, the sooner will their prices fall, so they become affordable to, for instance, India, where they need more generating capacity, and where now the health of the poor is jeopardized by smoky stoves burning wood and dung, and where there'll otherwise be pressure to build coal-fired power stations. And it will be hard to think of a more inspiring challenge for young engineers than devising clean and economical energy systems for the world. Arthur Clarke was attuned to science, but he was even more mindful that the world's future depends on technology and engineering. He'd have liked to New York a cartoon, which shows two beavers looking up at a vast hydroelectric dam. One says to the other, "I didn't actually build it, but just based on my idea." Armchair theorists like me should feel very modest compared to those who build things that work and that meet public demand. And I tell my cosmologist friends that the Swedish engineer who invented the zip fastener made a bigger intellectual leap than most of us ever will. So we should be evangelists for new technology, not Luddites, because without it, the world can't provide enough food, enough sustainable energy for an expanding and more demanding population. But there's a downside, which is that many are anxious that technology is advancing so fast that we may not properly cope with it, and we may have a bumpy ride through this century. And if I can plug my recent book, which expands on these concerns. What about the kind of technology we can expect between now and 2050? Advances in biotech offer prospects of containing pandemics and improving world health. But the same research will have controversial aspects. For instance, in 2012, research groups in Wisconsin and in Holland showed it was surprisingly easy to make the influenza virus both more virulent and more transmissible. To some, this was a scary portent of things to come, doing the same thing for the coronavirus, for instance. And the new CRISPR-Cas9 technique for gene editing is hugely promising, but there are again ethical concerns and worries about possible runaway consequences of gene drive programs to wipe out species as diverse as mosquitoes and grey squirrels. So regulation is going to be needed. But my biggest worry is that whatever regulations are imposed on prudential or ethical grounds, they can't be enforced worldwide any more than the drug laws can or the tax laws. And whatever can be done will be done by someone somewhere. And that's a nightmare, because whereas an atomic bomb can't be built without large-scale special purpose facilities which could be monitored, biotech involves small-scale dual-use equipment. Indeed, biohacking is burgeoning even as a hobby and competitive game. And we know all too well that technical expertise doesn't guarantee balanced rationality. The global village will have its village idiots, and they'll have global range. And the rising empowerment of tech-savvy groups, empowered by bio as well as cyber technology, will pose an intractable challenge to governments and aggravate the tension between privacy, freedom, and security. These concerns are fairly near term, within the next decade or so. What about 2050 and beyond? On the bio front, we might expect two things. First, a better understanding of the combination of genes that determine key human characteristics. And second, the ability to synthesize genomes that match these features. And the great physicist Freeman Dyson conjectures a time when children will be able to design and create new organisms, just as his generation played with chemistry sets. But if it really becomes possible to, as it were, play God on a kitchen table, our ecology and even our species may not long survive unscathed. So let's hope that stays science fiction. And what about another transformative technology? Robotics and artificial intelligence, AI. DeepMind's AlphaGo Zero computer famously achieved world champion level in the games of Go and chess in just a few hours. It was given just the rules and learnt by playing against itself over and over again. It plays so fast it does about a game per second. And it's of course the speed of computers that allows them to succeed by these brute force methods. And that is improving all the time, as shown in this graph. So AI can now cope with complex, fast-changing networks, traffic flow, or electric grids. And the Chinese now have the data and the processing power to have an efficient planned economy of a kind that Marx could only dream of. But AI can help science too. Perhaps it can find a recipe for a high-temperature superconductor, or analyze proton folding, or even settle whether string theory really describes the universe. But there are limitations to what machines can readily learn. Learning about human behavior, learning common sense, involves observing actual people in real homes or workplaces. And the machine would feel sensorily deprived by the slowness of real life. It's like watching trees grow is for us. That's one limitation. And robots are still clumsier than a child in moving pieces on a real chessboard. They can't jump from tree to tree like a squirrel. Though a Boston Dynamics robot, this one here, can do somersaults and a bit of athletics. But this technology is advancing fast. And another thing, this is the Go champion beaten by the computer. He is Mr. Lo Kui, but he has some advantages. The Go playing computer used hundreds of kilowatts of power, but his brain uses 30 watts, just a light bulb. He could do many other things apart from just playing Go. So there's still a lot of catch up to do. But let's look further ahead to the speculative future. What if a machine did develop a mind of its own? Would it stay docile or would it go rogue? Popular culture portrays a dark side, where AI gets out of its box, infiltrates the Internet of Things, and pursues goals misaligned with human interests, or even treats humans as an encumbrance. Some AI pundits take this seriously and think the field already needs guidelines, just as Biotech does. But others, like Rodney Brooks, inventor of the Baxter robot, regard these concerns as premature. He thinks it'll be a long time before artificial intelligence need worry us more than real stupidity does. But be that as it may, it's likely that society and the labour market will be transformed by autonomous robots, even though the jury's out on whether they'll be idiot savants, vulnerable to breakdowns, or display superhuman capabilities. This is the futurologist Ray Kurzweil, who now works at Google. He's a gung-ho enthusiast for all this, and he argues that once machines have surpassed human capabilities, they could themselves design and assemble a new generation of even more powerful ones, an intelligence explosion leading to the singularity. He wrote a book called The Age of Spiritual Machines, where he predicted that humans would transcend biology by merging with computers. In old-style spiritualist parlance, they would go over to the other side. But he's worried that his nirvana may not happen in his lifetime. So he wants his body frozen until it's reached. And there's a company in Arizona that will freeze your body in liquid nitrogen and store it until immortality is on offer. And you can then be resurrected or your brain downloaded. He's paid for this, and I was surprised to find that 3 academics in England, who I know, had gone in for this cryonics. 2 paid the full whack, and a third took the cut price option of wanting just his head frozen. I was glad that they were from Oxford and not from my university, because I told them I'd rather end my days in an English churchyard than an American refrigerator. But of course, more seriously, research on aging is being prioritized. But will the benefits be incremental, or is aging a disease that can be cured? Dramatic life extension would plainly be a real wild card in all population projections, with huge social ramifications as well. But it may happen along with human enhancement in other forms. And it's at least surely on the cards that human beings, their mentality and their physique, may become malleable through the deployment of genetic modifications and cyborg technology. Moreover, this future evolution, a kind of secular intelligent design, would take only centuries, thousands of times faster than Darwinian evolution. And this is a game changer. When we admire the literature and artifacts that have survived from antiquity, we feel an affinity across a time gulf of thousands of years with these ancient artists and their civilizations. But we can have zero confidence that the dominant intelligences a few centuries hence will have any emotional resonance with us, even though they may have an algorithmic understanding of how we behaved. For the rest of this talk, I'm going to turn to Arthur's favorite technology, space. It's beyond the Earth, in environments hostile to humans, that cyborg and AI technologies have the most spectacular scope, and where these changes will happen fastest and should worry us least. We depend every day, of course, on space for sat-nav, environmental monitoring, communications, and so forth. And as we know, robotic probes have beamed back pictures. There's a Cassini probe, which orbited Saturn for 13 years and sent back pictures of Enceladus, and Titan, where these lakes look rather nice, but they're liquid methane, minus 160 degrees centigrade. And NASA's New Horizon went to take these pictures of Pluto, about 12,000 times further away than the moon. And these probes were all designed in the 1990s It's 7 years to build, 10 years on their journey. If we realize how mobile phones have changed in the last 20 years, think how much better we could do now. And we can hope that there will be probes, whole flotillas of probes, studying all the outer planets and their moons during this century, and fabricators building large structures in space. But what role will humans play? The Apollo program, 50 years ago, remains the high point of human spaceflight. And I treasure this picture signed for me a few years ago by 7 of the Apollo astronauts. But there's less need for humans as robots get better. Indeed, we've just had the 20th anniversary of the International Space Station, and I think it's been hard to justify its immense cost. And indeed, if I was an American, I don't think I'd want my taxes used to fund human space flight. I say that because it's better spearheaded by private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin, because they can take higher risks than NASA can impose on publicly funded civilians. We know NASA is very risk averse. The 2 failures of the shuttle, a less than 2% failure rate, were each national traumas. So I think it's best to leave it to the private sector and private sponsorship and hope that by 2100, courageous thrill seekers, many with just one-way tickets, will have established a base on Mars. We should hope this happens. But don't ever expect mass emigration from Earth. Elon Musk himself says he wants to die on Mars, but not an impact. Good luck to him. But I disagree with him and the late Stephen Hawking, who advocated rapid build-up of large-scale Martian communities. It's a dangerous delusion to think that space offers an escape from Earth's problems. We've got to solve these here. Coping with climate change may seem daunting, but it's a doddle compared to terraforming Mars. Nowhere in our solar system offers an environment even as clement as the Antarctic or the ocean bed. There's no planet B for ordinary risk-averse people. But we should cheer on the brave space adventurers because they will have a pivotal role in spearheading the post-human future and determining what happens in the 22nd century and far beyond. This is why. By 2100, we'll surely have developed super powerful genetic and cyborg technology. And these techniques will, one hopes, be restrained here on Earth for reasons of prudence and ethics. But the settlers on Mars will be beyond the clutch of the regulators. Moreover, they'll be ill adapted to their new habitat, so they'll have a compelling incentive to redesign themselves. So it's these spacefaring adventurers, not those of us comfortably adapted to life on Earth, who will spearhead a post-human era. And that era is very long. The Earth existed for 45 million centuries, 4.5 billion years. And most of us are familiar of the time chart of Darwinian evolution that's happened during that time. But we are not the culmination, indeed not even the halfway stage, because we know that the sun has 6 billion years ahead of it. And even when the sun dies, the universe goes on expanding, perhaps forever. To quote Woody Allen, eternity is very long, especially towards the end. So we can imagine that the evolution, which may be started by these pioneers on Mars, will lead, maybe within a millennium or so, to electronic entities, and rather than flesh and blood, because maybe there's a limit to the capacity of flesh and blood to create better brains. And then, of course, if they're electronic, then they won't want an atmosphere. They may prefer 0G. They can go off to the blue yonder. And if they're near immortal, they won't be daunted by interstellar voyages. And so this is the scenario that I would see for the future. And indeed, this could happen as in the next million years or so, still a tiny fraction of the time lying ahead. If they're around in 4 billion years, one big event they'll see is Andromeda and our galaxy merging. And this movie shows what that's like. Andromeda will fall towards us and we'll be left with an amorphous galaxy. And then the sun and the solar system won't be disturbed very much, but then the sun will fade away and eventually the stars will fade away. So there's plenty of time for the progeny of humans, maybe led by those on Mars, to spread through the entire galaxy. But the question then is the galaxy awaiting our descendants, or is the life out there already? This is the big question. It's always the first question I'm asked when people know I'm an astronomer. And so we want to know, is there life out there? And of course, as everyone knows, there are searches in our solar system, but the field widened hugely when we realized that most stars had planets around them. When we learned that almost every star has a planet around it, and 1 in every 6 stars has an Earth-like planet, something about the size of the Earth, orbiting its star in the so-called habitable zone, where water neither freezes nor boils away. And we observe lots of these planetary systems. I don't have time to show all the slides, but let me show you this system, which is a miniature solar system. The star in the center is a red dwarf, about 1/10 the sun's mass, about 100th its brightness, and there's 7 planets going around it. And their years are between 1.5 of our days and about 2 of our weeks. And the outermost 3 of these 7 planets are in the so-called habitable zone, where there would be liquid water. They may not be very comfortable for life because for 2 reasons. First, they're very powerful flares from these kind of stars. And secondly, they'd be tightly locked. They'd present their same face to the star, just as the moon does to the Earth. And so if you lived on them, then there'd be half the planet in perpetual light, half in perpetual darkness. So there'd be a sort of apartheid with everyone on the light side, except the astronomers who'd be by themselves, like on the dark side. So these are habitable planets. But of course, the key question is there actual life? Because habitable doesn't mean inhabited. And we just don't know, of course. But some people do know. I get letters from people who've met the aliens who've been abducted by them. I get these because I'm the Astronomer Royal, I guess. And I reply by saying, do you really think that after the efforts of traversing interstellar space, the aliens would have met just 1 or 2 well-known cranks, maybe made a corn circle and gone away again? It seems unlikely. And I tell them they should write to each other and not write to me. But we can learn a bit more about these planets with our telescopes. Most of what we know so far has been discovered by looking for their effect on their parent star. You observe a transit where the star gets fainter, or you observe a gravitational tug which gives the star a little bit of motion. It's very hard to detect the light from the planet because that's about 1 million or more times fainter than light from the star. But this will be possible with the next generation of big telescopes. And this is a telescope being built by European astronomers in Chile. They're not very imaginative in their names. It's called the Extremely Large Telescope, the ELT, and it's got a mirror 39 meters across, a mosaic of 800 pieces of glass. And this will be able to gather enough light from a planet orbiting another star to get a crude spectrum of it. and to learn perhaps if it's got vegetation on, signs of chlorophyll or oxygen, etc. And it could learn other things. To illustrate that, let's imagine that there were some people, aliens, 50 light years away with a telescope like that, looking at the Earth. Then to them, the Earth would look like a pale blue dot, in Carl Sagan's phrase, very close in the sky to its star, our sun, and much, much, much fainter. But if they look carefully, they could not only analyze the spectrum, but they could learn about its surface, because the shade of blue would be slightly different depending on whether the Pacific Ocean or the landmass of Asia was facing them. So they could infer the length of our day, that there were continents, and something about the climate and the seasons. And we'll be able to perhaps do this in the next 20 years for nearby Earth-like planets using big telescopes like this and big ones in space. The next challenge, of course, is to actually image a planet, not just see it as a point. This is much harder. This will require a huge interferometer in space, way beyond what's now being planned by NASA. But I say in my book that this should be done, if possible, by 2068. Why do I say that? Because that's the centenary of the famous Earthrise picture, which I showed as my first slide. And it would be great if 100 years after that iconic picture, we can put on our walls a picture showing an Earth-like planet orbiting another star. And I think that's a realistic aim on that timescale. Well, what about life? Do we really expect it? Well, the answer again is that although we understand the evolution of life, we don't know how even on Earth life began, what triggered the transition from complex chemistry to the first replicating, metabolizing things we call alive. We don't know whether it was a rare fluke or whether it was common. And that's why we need to study this more carefully. There are more serious people working on this problem, but that's why it would be so exciting if we did find some spectral signatures indicating a non-equilibrium biosphere in space. Well, supposing that there was life, would there be intelligent life? Of course, even if life is common, intelligent life could be rare, but that's the even more exciting thing that people want to find. So what should we look for? Of course, there are SETI programs, which we know about, but let me just say what I think we should look for. We don't know, and the only guide we have is what's happened on the Earth and what may happen in the future of the Earth. So let's suppose that there are indeed other planets where life began, and that on some of them Darwinian evolution follows a similar track to what's happened here. Even then, it's unlikely that the key stage will be synchronized. It may have taken longer to get through the various sort of difficult bottlenecks of evolution. On the other hand, some planets may be 1 billion years older than our Earth, and they have a head start. And they would have advanced beyond our own planet. And so let's think about what's happened on Earth. It's taken 4 billion years for us to emerge and technological civilization. And that civilization has lasted for a few millennia, and within one further millennium, certainly even less, it could be that the dominant species will no longer be us. It'll be something electronic, and something electronic which doesn't need to stay on its planet and may move away. And those entities, those electronic entities, will have a lifetime possibly billions of years. So if there were another planet which had tracked an evolutionary path like the past and likely future of our Earth, then it's unlikely to be so well synchronized that we observe it when it's got a flesh and blood civilization like us, because a few millennia is a tiny fraction of time compared to the billions of years we're talking about. Far more likely that it will be either behind us where there'll be no intelligence, or the stage when it spawned these electronic entities going through space. So we must reinterpret the Drake equation. The lifetime of an organic high-tech civilization may be millennia at most, but its electronic diaspora could continue for billions of years. And that vast time span should make one more optimistic about a successful SETI search. However, if SETI succeeded, this makes it less likely that there will be some decodable message, because we'll come from something very, very different from us. We have absolutely zero ideas of the motivation of these post-human entities. Well, so I'm running out of time, but I would like to just make one final comment about something else we've learnt, which Arthur Clarke would have appreciated. And this is that not only is the universe more interesting because it's full of planets as well as stars, but it's far vaster even than it was thought in his time. With the Hubble telescope or other big telescopes, you can take these deep pictures, and this is just a few minutes of arc on the sky. It's got hundreds of galaxies far, far away. So we can see literally billions of galaxies. But the volume accessible to our telescopes, and indeed the volume within our horizon, may be a tiny fraction of our universe in the sense of the aftermath of our Big Bang. Because the region we can see is limited by how far light's been able to come since the Big Bang. And there are good reasons to think that space goes on much, much further than that. So for every galaxy that we can see, there are zillions which are inaccessible far beyond. And there may be so many that all combinatorial options are produced. So there could be another set of people like us on some different world in a different unit, in a different galaxy. So we may have an avatar far away. And that's not all, because I've talked so far about the aftermath of our Big Bang. But the other exciting possibility is that our Big Bang may not be the only one. This is, and Andre Linde has the idea that there could be a whole sort of ensemble of space-times. This is a cartoon which illustrates the region we can see, our horizon, as part of the aftermath of our Big Bang, but that's just one of many Big Bangs in what we call a multiverse. And we don't know if that's the case. Our Big Bang could be just one island in a vast cosmic archipelago. And incidentally, these other Big Bangs could be governed by quite different physical laws from ours. So we may indeed be due for a fourth and grandest Copernican revolution. We've had that revolution itself, then the realization that our solar system is one of many, and our Milky Way galaxy is one of many. But maybe our Big Bang is one of many. Multiverses are still speculative physics, because we don't have a battle-tested theory which describes the very beginning of the Big Bang and tells us whether this sort of model, which was due to Andre Linde at Stanford, is credible. In fact, about 10 years ago, I was on a panel at Stanford where we were asked how much we'd bet on the multiverse concept. I said that on the scale, would you bet your goldfish, your dog, or your life? I was nearly at the dog level. And Andre Linde, who'd spent 25 years promoting his version of the multiverse, he said he'd almost bet his life. And the great theorist, Steven Weinberg, then said he'd happily bet Martin Rees's dog and Andre Linde's life. Well, Andre Linde, my dog, and I will all be dead before this is settled, but it's not metaphysics. It's highly speculative, but it's exciting science, and it may be true. But let me conclude, finally, by zooming in from the cosmos, or even an entangled multitude of cosmoses, to the realities close to the here and now. My key message will be this. Even in the context of a concertina timeline, extending billions of years into the past and into the future, this century is special. It's the first when one species on Earth, ours, has a planet's future in its hands. Our creative intelligence could jumpstart the transition from an Earth-based to a spacefaring species and from biological to artificial intelligence. Transitions that could inaugurate billions of years of post-human evolution, even more marvelous than what's happened to us. On the other hand, a more empowered and demanding human population could, by misadventure, trigger catastrophes that foreclose all these potentialities. So spaceship Earth is hurtling through the void. Its passengers are anxious and fractious. Their life support system is vulnerable to disruption and breakdown. You need to think globally, rationally, and long-term, empowered by 21st century science, but guided by values that science alone can't provide. Because our Earth, this pale blue dot in the cosmos, is a special place. It may be a unique place, and we're its stewards at a especially crucial era. That's an important message for us all, and would surely have struck a resonance with Arthur C. Clarke. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Martin. That was wonderful. I sure wish we had Sir Arthur to ask questions. It would be so much fun. We have people in the audience online submitting questions, so please send them in through the chat, and I'll try to get to a few of them. However, I wanted to take a little director's privilege and ask you a question myself. You've taken this romp up and down time for us, and of course here in North America we have perhaps a different view of the time scale in our living circumstances than you in Europe. You mentioned that the Queen hadn't asked you to do her horoscope, being the Astronomer Royal, but I wondered if there might have been some special privilege or experience that being the Astronomer Royal gave to you. You know, you're there at Cambridge with where Isaac Newton was. It's kind of stunning to think of those people as real. Is there a little story or thing that you might have share with us?
Well, I'll say one thing peripheral to that, which is that you may have know about longitude and Harrison and all that. The Board of Longitude was set up in 1714 to administer this, and you know the story that they were very grudging and they gave Harrison the prize eventually. But the tercentenary of the Board of Longitude, which was a sort of research funder for a whole century, was in 2014. And I thought it would be nice to commemorate that. And so I went to the government, and I felt I was the right person to do this, because on the Board of Longitude there were 8 ex officio people, and they included the Astronomer Royal, the Cambridge Professor of Astronomy, and the President of the Royal Society. And I've been all 3 of those. So I'd have had 3 of the 8 votes if it was set up again. So what I did was I thought it would be good to celebrate this. And indeed, the government has set up a new longitude prize, a challenge prize with a £10 million bounty. And we had a competition for what the challenge should be. And it was related to antibiotic resistance, to devise a gadget that could tell very quickly whether someone in Africa has a disease that needs, that's a viral disease or a bacterial disease, so you don't unnecessarily use antibiotics, etc. And that's going on, and we're having a second prize now. So that was something which I did using the history. But of course, my day job is in Cambridge, because the Astronomer Royal was the person who ran the Greenwich Observatory. But when that became a museum in the 1960s, because we used telescopes overseas, then they kept the title and made it honorary title. And I'm the current holder of this, but my job is in Cambridge, where Isaac Newton was, so I do feel an affinity with the place because of Newton and Eddington and all the other astronomers who have been also in Cambridge before my time.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. I'll be most anxious to catch up with you about the Longitude Prize and future prizes, as we've been involved with prizes here in the Clarke Center with the X Prize.
So right, of course, we know about the X Prizes.
Yes. So getting to some questions from our audience, I have a good one here. It says, what exploration mission are you most excited about? What in your upcoming years is a mission that's going to be getting an exciting result for you? We just had the capture from from the asteroid. What mission are you excited about?
Well, I think probably the missions to the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, to Europa and Enceladus, to see if there's any evidence for life. I think no one expects anything very exciting. There could be something on Mars, but there could be something swimming under the ice of Europa or Enceladus, and any ways of finding that out. Ideally by a robot submarine, but of course the first thing they will do is have a spacecraft that goes through the spray that occasionally emerges above the surface. And the reason this is so exciting is that I think, although we don't expect any exciting life in our solar system, that's why the discovery of exoplanets so transformed the field. But if we were to find any kind of life in the outer solar system, it would immediately tell us that there were 1 billion sites of life in the universe, in the galaxy. Because if life had originated twice independently within one planetary system, it can't be a rare fluke. And we'd expect, on average, it would have originated in almost all the systems. So it's at the moment possible that life is unique in the galaxy to this one planet. But to have real evidence showing that there must be 1 billion sites of life would make a big difference. That's why I prioritize those missions. I mentioned Mars, of course, is another place to look, but that would be quite so clinching because, as you know, some people think we're all Martians, that life could have started on Mars when it was more benign and come on a meteorite to the Earth or something. So we wouldn't be completely sure it was independent. Whereas if there was some life under the ice of Enceladus, for instance, it would have originated independently. And that's why it would be so important. So I think that's my answer to the question.
So would Venus, life on Venus fit in that, your comment about Mars as well? Or
well, it would have the same problem as the escape clause that you have for Mars, but nonetheless, and of course, the recent phosphine is exciting. I think that's still controversial, but it's important that we should look for very exotic kinds of life. This would be something living about 50 kilometers up, where Venus's atmosphere is at the same temperature as our atmosphere, and the pressure about the same as the pressure of our atmosphere at the ground.
Yes, I'm pulling for Venus. I would like to see it happen there. Yes. So
it's not very nice on the surface.
Yeah,
Yes,
floating in the clouds would be more
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
I think.
Yes. Yes.
So going back to perhaps a little more human side of things, back to the first part of your talk, I imagine this question comes to you many times, but an important one. So if AI succeeds, and robotics succeeds, will there be enough jobs for humans? What are we going to do when they get all the smarts and are calling the shots?
Well, I mean, it's true, as you say, they will take over lots of routine jobs, and also some professional jobs like computer coding, routine legal work, and medical diagnostics and even surgery.
Well, hang on there. I think coders, lawyers, and doctors might have a little discussion with you about that.
But also many blue-collar ones. But in fact, jobs like gardening and plumbing will be very hard to automate.
Okay.
But I think the more serious answer I give is that I think what should happen is to tax the owners and the big companies that make lots of money out of these, and use that money to set up far more dignified and better paid jobs for carers for old people and for young people and teaching assistants. Those are jobs where there's a huge shortage now, and we ought to try and provide carers for everyone, not just for the rich. And this could be done if the public sector took up this challenge. This is a win-win situation, because jobs being displaced include being a sort of working in a call center or an Amazon warehouse, which are pretty mind-numbing jobs. And if they're replaced by machines, and those people can have jobs where human qualities are crucial, so it's certainly true that there will be a massive shift in the labour market. But I think this would be something we could deal with proper taxation. I say this with more optimism that the Scandinavians will do this than the Americans will, and we're somewhere in between. But I think that's what we would need to do.
Well, let's hope that there are engaging, enjoyable jobs for all, and that our society recognizes them and takes advantage of them.
Sure.
Kind of like there was the thing, in the war on drugs in America in the past. It was mind is a terrible thing to waste, and of course, billions of minds are a terrible thing for us to waste.
Yes.
And, we can still do many things that the computing.
Yes, and I think it's really a symbiosis of people and AI is what we're going to need. And of course, when I talk of medical diagnostics,
Yes.
that's going to be a combination of the ability of the machine to have in its memory 100,000 radiographs of lungs and things, and that's helping the doctor.
Well, thank goodness, as a physician, I guess I have a little bit of job security yet. So.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to thank you again so much for joining us, and we'll engaging with you as we go along in our Profiles of the Future project, and perhaps might get you to pen a testimonial for us or something along that line. And to everyone who joined us online here, well over 100 people, thanks so much for joining us. Keep an eye out on our Clarke Center website, imagination.ucsd, and check out our podcast with my co-director, Dr. Brian Keating, who's been talking to all kinds of exciting people like this year's Nobel Prize winner, Sir Roger Penrose, with all kinds of amazing interviews in his podcast, Into the Impossible. So again, thanks so much, Martin, for joining us and everybody else, and we'll see you at the next event. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Eric, for inviting me, and I hope to be with you for real when I can come to La Jolla again.
Very soon. We'll invite you as soon as we can, as soon as it's safe. Thanks very much.
Okay.